Daniel, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And happy new album release day, I should say, as we're recording this. It's Friday, May 3rd, and Lost Themes 4 is out today. I've been listening to it all morning as I was just prepping for this conversation, and I'm loving it. So, congrats on another awesome release. Is this an exciting time for you, like when it's a new album release day?
Well, yeah, I mean, you work on something for a while and then you're just ready for it to come out, and
Yeah.
yeah, the response has been really great, and yeah, it's exciting. It's a little bit of a different sound than our other records, and it just feels good to get it out there. And um, we were doing some signings yesterday, and the records really turned out. Really beautiful. Sacred Bones did an amazing job, and yeah, we're really pleased. It's really cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But before we even get to the music or the movies, we always, because every day is Halloween for us, as you can see and might imagine. We
Yeah.
like to get people's origin story whenever possible, kind of through the lens of the Halloween holiday a little bit. So maybe you can flash us back to growing up. And I know your earliest years, I believe, were in the UK, if I'm not mistaken,
And
before
they didn't have Halloween
relocating to
then.
LA.
There
Right.
was no Halloween.
So was it an awakening for you when you did move to the
I think
States?
in
I mean,
England
what did
at
you
that
look at
time.
Halloween growing up before then and wonder what was going on with us Americans?
Well, my mom is American and my dad is English, so I always
Okay,
knew
so
about
you
Halloween.
so you
But
knew
I,
you were well aware.
yeah, I think there was some. I can't remember what it's called now, but you probably know. It's like where they set like a big bonfire. Uh, but there was no trick or treating or anything. I think that came later. I think there is now, but
Right.
in the 80s there wasn't. But yeah, I mean, then we moved here, and then that's just kind of it's just an additional holiday, and it's pretty fun, especially when you're a kid and trick or treating, and then and then the connection with John and all that. It didn't really, when you're a kid, you don't really understand
Sure.
that the person that they're dressed up as, that John created that. So it doesn't really connect until later. But yeah, we would have great Halloween parties, like Star Wars themed parties, and all kinds of stuff. Halloween is a fun time.
Well, and I was going to ask that, obviously our audience is curious because you did, spend so much time in your life and growing up, with John and his family, obviously.
Right.
What the Halloween vibe was like around there. I got to talk to Sandy King last year, and I asked her a little bit about what Halloween in the Carpenter house was like, and she told us a little bit about that. But maybe from your point of view, you can transport us back a little bit to what you experienced.
Yeah, when kids are around, the holiday is about kids,
Yeah,
and treating and all that.
sure.
So it's traditional in that way. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing too unusual about it,
Yeah.
than anyone else's Halloween. It just happens that, you know, uh, that John is who he is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't have anything unusual to say about it, fortunately. But
Well, that's yeah, yeah.
it's
Well,
just
and
a time to celebrate.
yeah,
And what I think. For me, I didn't quite understand like the connection that so many people had until we were out on the road and doing the tours and stuff, and
yeah,
seeing how people were connected to that. So that was really cool to see that later, as you get older.
absolutely. And like you said, so much of those ironies of being around John when, like you said, you're seeing people your age probably dressed as Michael Myers and other characters that he's worked on over the years. Um,
Yeah, I think I dressed as Michael Myers one year, not even really knowing. not really understanding what was happening yet, young, like 12,
Right.
13.
And I was curious. I was going to ask you only because I talked to Sandy and she told us this great story. Well, she told us how she would always make handmade costumes most years, but one
Right.
year she broke her rule because Cody really wanted to be an alien xenomorph, and she asked Greg Nicotero to make him this xenomorph costume. Do you have any memory of witnessing that back in the
No, I don't remember that. So
day?
I'm sure it would have been great.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, yeah. Somewhere there's got to be a photo of that somewhere. I'm sure it was epic. Um, Another thing I think we as fans of your dad and of the Kinks, we probably imagine that music is something that you were just born with. It's always been in your blood, and so is that true as you see it, or was there a moment that you can isolate where you kind of realize this is what you wanted to do with your life?
Um, well, I think when you're really young, you don't really understand kind of what
Yeah,
your parents are doing, and then you're like, oh, they play music, and then you see a guitar around, and I would just kind of pick it up and hold it. I wasn't sure what you do with it, and
yeah.
then when I was a teenager, I thought, oh, I'll play drums, and there was a music class at school in Marin County in Inverness. I was staying with John and Sandy for a semester while they were filming up there, and I was at Tomales Bay High School, and they had a music class, and uh, I think I was just a little bit angry, so I wanted to hit the drums, So you were able to you had a week to decide what instrument you wanted to play, and then I was playing the drums, and then the last day I changed the guitar. I just thought I can. It just suddenly I was like, wait a second, I think I can do that. And because when I just held it, it feels so natural. And you know, it just evolves from there. I mean, when you're just around creative people and you see how that starts to work as you get a little older and more mindful. It's really inspiring. So, um, yeah, if there was a song on TV, I would just run in on it, be like, how does this song go? We would figure it out, or, John would have guitars around and we'd all play music together, and Cody. And so it's just always around. And, my dad's love for John's movies and just music and movies, and it's just all that all the time. So I was just connected to it. I just felt really connected. And then you start to get out your frustrations and your through music, and it's a good
Mhm.
way that I found to express myself.
And it sounds like you guys, because I was going to ask, like when these collaborations started, it sounds like it's just always kind of been and just always been jam sessions, for lack of a better term, family jam sessions. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think, when John would finish a movie, they would have these parties,
Yeah.
these great parties, and they had just instruments set up and different people play, and you know people that John worked with were really generous. And when you're a kid and you're sitting there and they take the time to kind of talk to you and play music with you and stuff like that, and just it's all just kind of evolved naturally.
And I was thinking about it today. It's crazy, as we're talking about Lost Themes 4, but it's been now 9 years since the first Lost Themes, which I didn't even realize it until I looked it up today. I was like, is that right? But man, it's crazy that it's already been 9 years. How did that initial album come to be?
Well, John and Cody had been working on some ideas,
Okay.
and just casually, they would hang out, watch basketball game, and play some video games, and then go down to the music room and record some music. And then John got a new music attorney, and she asked him if he had any material. And the next thing you know, Sacred Bones, he did a deal with Sacred Bones, and then Cody moved to Japan, and then John, at that time I had like about a year before that had started just dedicating myself to composing. And he asked me if I wanted to do it with him, and that then we could work on the songs that him and Cody had started, and then I would bring in some new ideas, and then we would go back and forth with Cody in Japan, and then it all just evolved from there, and then that album was received well, so then we did another one, and then a tour, and then another one, and we just have such a great time doing it that the inspiration is there. We just keep going.
And I know it's just, for those of us like lifelong fans of John's, just the films and the music and the soundtracks and everything, and just all things John Carpenter, I remember just the excitement. I mean, there's excitement today, but the excitement of 9 years ago for that first Lost Themes, it was just such a cool idea. And I remember, the way everybody described it was, it's like the soundtrack to films that don't exist, that only exist in our minds. And that's always what it's kind of felt like every time one of these albums come out. And it's just such a treat for so many of us, for sure.
Yeah,
now,
I love it too.
Now, at what point did the idea or the prospect of doing the 2018 Halloween film enter into this? Because again, this was another moment where, like, for Michael Myers fanatics and Halloween fans, Carpenter fans, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. And I've heard Malik Akkad say it was like the first call he made once things were getting in motion was to John. But when did you guys, like, what's your kind of earliest memories of conversations, stirrings that, hey, maybe we're gonna work on this Halloween 2018 soundtrack?
I think how it started was David Gordon Green and Danny McBride had presented an idea to John and wanted to include him and Jamie Lee Curtis, and I think Malik Akkad and Blumhouse were all working on an idea, and then later, John said, "Oh, they might be making a Halloween, and maybe we should see about doing the music." Talk to David Gordon Green about it, and David Gordon Green thought that was a great idea, and then it just kind of evolved from there. And then they, and then we were doing it, and it was really fun to do that. It was amazing, to be with, like, I remember, like, we had written a whole bunch of music for the film, and it was the first time that David Gordon Green came and sat with us, and sitting with John and him together making the movie and helping that story evolve was really incredible.
And were you, obviously, like you said, in your younger years, it doesn't even register that John created Michael Myers and all of these iconic films. At this point, are you a fan of Michael Myers, of these films at all yourself, and just as a film fan yourself?
But yeah, I mean, I like a lot of John's movies, and yeah, I feel like Halloween has a very unique feel,
Yeah.
and I like that. And I think David Gordon Green's 2018 one had a kind of a connection to that feel. He kind of kept that going, and then over the other two movies he did, that the third one then really, I felt like, became his own, and yeah, I mean, yeah, once I was a teenager, what's happening, and but yeah, I mean, it's great to be a small part of that, you know.
Well, and I was going to ask that if like there was a point where you're working on this soundtrack and you're like inside, maybe just geeking out a little bit, that this is the return of, because again, for us fans, it had been a long time since the last time we had a Michael Myers movie of any kind, and much less with John's involvement in the soundtrack. I mean, this was like a huge deal for us anyway. Was there ever like a moment just even inside where you're just thinking, man, this is pretty awesome?
Yeah, there was a moment in so we had like a first sort of rough cut of the film that we were working on, and it didn't have the opening titles yet, so we hadn't put
Okay.
the theme in,
Hmm.
John's original theme, and there's a long first person shot in that movie through the houses. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
And from Michael Myers' perspective, and that's where we put in the Halloween theme for the first time, and the movie became Halloween suddenly, and it was amazing. It was a really exciting moment. Like you get goosebumps, and so that was one I remember. That was quite striking, and just a great memory from doing that. And you know, it's that those movies just have just a couple minutes of the original themes, and then we wrote an hour and a half of more original music for those movies in each one. And um, but those to be a part of those original themes and all that music, it was just so much fun. We just have such a great time doing it, and uh, that just those kind of movies are just so fun.
Now, when you were talking about the first album, you mentioned, John and Cody had a lot of the tracks already kind of in progress, it sounds like. Typically now though, and with the soundtracks, I'm curious, like what, does it start with a riff or does it start with something on piano, or and how is that different when you're doing a soundtrack versus, one of the Lost Themes albums?
Well, for a movie, you're guided by the image
Hmm.
and what the director's looking for. So, but for Lost Themes or any album, it's just what you want to do. What's your feeling and what are you going for? So, those are the main differences for that. And then, for Lost Themes, we each bring in a sketch, and then see how it goes. Do we like that? Like, maybe it's a piano thing, maybe it's a guitar riff, or, um, and then we just start working on it.
Yeah.
We don't overanalyze the
Hmm.
initial, we we run on instinct first, and then once it's all kind of together, then we can kind of pick it apart a bit more.
I like that. Um, Now, and you've also worked on some non-Halloween films. There was Firestarter, of course, and then there's another film project that hadn't come out yet, Death of a Unicorn,
Yeah.
that you guys, I guess you've already scored it, I imagine.
We're currently working on it right now.
Okay, you're working on it right now. That sounds like that's going to be a really interesting project from everything I've heard about just the brief synopsis line and the cast and having you guys involved. It sounds like it's going to be really cool. Is there anything you
Yeah.
can tell us about that?
It's like a dark fantasy. Um, it's pretty fun, an unusual movie. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Yeah. Can't really say much more than that right now.
And you've mentioned already a little bit about touring and getting to experience, some of that passion that fans have for John's music. Can you talk a little bit about that a little bit more, and especially since, working on these soundtracks and now being kind of part of this Haddonfield, this Halloween franchise family, in such a big way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the genre of horror and science fiction is very dedicated fans, you know, and uh very detailed oriented, you know, and just just really passionate. And I didn't know that really. Not I was naive to that, you know, like but then when we started playing and meeting people and hanging and doing the signings, and you could just really see, you know, it's like I think also maybe, you know, I think was a new thing for John too. It's like you put out a movie and then you're just home. It's like a concert. It's like you're there with everybody, you know, and yeah, it was a really a great feeling, a great community of people. And, you know, it's funny because all the material is pretty dark, you know, but everyone is really joyous in the moment. So it's interesting, you know. What do you think about that? Why is that?
It is an interesting dichotomy, like you said, very very dark material, but yeah, it brings. I mean, there's certainly the nostalgia factor. I think there's that. You know, it brings a warm place to a lot of us, at least of a certain couple generations that grew up with those films. So there's definitely that. Um, and I don't know. I mean, yeah, it feels warm maybe to people, even though it's dark. You
Yeah.
know, these
Yeah.
movies like Halloween,
It's a
it's
great
like comfort
escape
food.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and a great escape, like you said.
Mm.
Absolutely. And just something unique that we hadn't gotten to experience really, you know. We've all experienced these movies and these themes in so many different ways and mediums over the years and re-releases and but to get it that way in a live concert, I think that was probably a huge attraction as well.
Yeah. It was fun.
And hopefully there'll be more. There'll be some more
I
touring
hope so.
at some point.
Yeah.
Now, with the new album, Lost Themes 4 Noir, it's out. Like I said, I've been listening to it. You mentioned it's got some different sounds. I really like Last Rites. That might be an
Yeah.
early front runner for maybe my favorite. Again, I've only listened to it a couple times, but
Yeah.
that one rocks. I really like that. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of that track and some of the other what you were mentioning is as some of the newer sounds on this
Um, yeah, I mean, that one's guitar heavy, as you said,
one? Yeah.
and yeah, we had just been, um, I mean, it just kind of, I just sat down and started, you know, I just sometimes you know, you talk about nostalgia and some of that a little bit, and you know, and I was trying to, you know, in the past year or so, like kind of get back to the beginning of when you start to learn guitar, or when I start to learn guitar, and this that freedom that you feel. And I wanted to get back to that a little bit in um in music lately. And I just started chugging, you know, and then put that first part together, and then I was really liking it, and then I brought it over to John, and then he was like, yeah, this sounds like the Last Rites, you know, and then there's the title, and then you know it's like send it to Cody, and we're like, okay, if we could have some sort of middle section here, can you? And it just came back, and I was like, oh, it's perfect, and then kind of put it together from there, and then that's just it's hard to explain things like that, you know,
Yeah.
they just kind of happen, you know, and hopefully they happen. And yeah, that's one of my favorite songs on the album. And I had you know, been listening to some Metallica had put out a new record, and I had been listening to that, and I got excited about that, and it got
Hmm.
me excited about like that energetic to be a little, you know, a lot of soundtrack music can be, you know, it's not always so energetic, and I wanted to insert some energy into it, and yeah, it just felt good. So we go with the feeling, if it feels right, and then we let it just go from there,
I love it. Yeah, and that's definitely one of my favorites. And another one that struck me the first time I heard it, the Demon's Shadow, I think it's called. I just love it. It almost gave me a Black Sabbath feel at times
Yeah.
with that. I'm like, oh my god, you guys are like channeling Sabbath to my ears anyway at parts of it. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, that does have a Sabbath sort of feel, but
Yeah,
that's not intentional. It's just
right.
kind of after the fact. You know, I love Sabbath too, and I think, that I think originally that didn't have all those guitars, and then as it kind of went along,
Yeah,
it's kind of, so, and then maybe that one, I think, John and Cody have been working on that the first part of it, and then John just casually says, "Oh, let's put some guitars on there," and then it kind of becomes a little heavier in that way, or the sound of it kind of leads to that, or maybe that one has the Devil's Interval, that Sabbath uses that a lot, and
yeah.
that so maybe that's why it has that feel, but yeah, that's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, it does kind of, yeah. It's got that feel for sure, and again, just that dark heaviness, which I
Well,
love anyway. I appreciate that, and the marrying of kind of genres in a way. Um, uh, you mentioned Last Rites is one of your favorites. Is that your favorite track? If you had to pick one of the new album, do you have a favorite?
uh yeah, I like that one, and yeah, and My Name is Death, and
Yeah,
1, 2, and it's rare that you get to just play a long guitar solo in a track like that,
yeah.
um but yeah, I really just like the whole feel of the album and how it turned out, and with the noir elements that we were inspired by, and it just it feels exciting, and I'm really just pleased with how it turned out.
And I always love the names of the tracks on all the albums. And how do you guys go about naming the tracks?
Well, this album was different than the other ones. You know, John had Sandy had given John a book of portraits, noir portraits for Christmas, and it was sitting there, and John was like, "Oh, check out this book," and I picked it up, and all the imagery is so strong and striking, So I was thinking about it, and then I said to John, what if, we had kind of started on the album, and I was like, what if we kind of base it around your favorite noir films, and what are your favorite noir films? And, like John just knows so much about cinema, you can just ask him anything about it. And then we just start talking about that, and I was like, pick some titles, put it together, let's see. And then, some are direct titles of movies, some are inspired by it. Last Rites was an instantaneous thing, inspired by the music. So, and then that all just kind of fit with the theme of the music. And then some titles inspired the music, and some of the music inspired the titles, it kind of all kind of works together. Um, yeah, and that's how it all kind of came to be this time. But yeah, I think a lot, but most of the titles, I think just and the other albums, I mean, sometimes we have titles, but then most of the times I like John comes up with the titles, and um I hate making titles unless it just kind of comes out. But yeah, sometimes it all works different, but this one was a little bit more direct in that way.
Very cool. And we also have to talk about your own solo album. You also have coming out in a few weeks. Really, it's very soon, and the first single's out now. And I've been listening to that a lot too. I'm really digging that, and so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, what can you tell us about your new album?
Well, that's more of it's not instrumental. It has I'm
Mm-hmm.
singing that one, and it just felt like time to do that again. Like the first part of my career, I was touring and as a singer and guitar player in a band, and then I put that aside to focus on, soundtrack work and
Mm-hmm.
scoring and occasionally doing, end titles song or inspired by soundtrack stuff. But yeah, I had these demos around, and when I would have an idea, I just kind of put it down and keep it to the side, and it just uh it just felt like the right time to make that album. It just was in me, and it just started happening. And John Spiker, who we work with on, he mixed Lost Themes, and he helps me mix all our soundtrack work that we do and scores. And I played it for him, and he was like, "Yeah, let's make it. Let's do it." And just so yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and and then Sacred Bones is putting that out too. And yeah, right now the first song, I Know Why, is out, and then the second single is coming out in a couple weeks, and then the album Ghost of the Heart come out in June. So yeah, it's I'm excited about it. I'm happy with how it turned out.
So that's a lot going on. I mean, we've got the new album that just dropped today as we're speaking, as we're recording this, and then we've got your album next month. We've got the soundtrack to Death of the Unicorn to
Yeah.
look forward to as well. So we got a lot of exciting music. Am I missing anything? Are there other projects that you can plug that we can look forward to?
There's gonna be something special this Halloween.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a good
Yeah,
little
yeah.
tease there. I'll
There
take
will be
that.
something special this Halloween for all the Halloweenies out there.
Excellent, excellent. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll absolutely be looking forward to that, and who knows, we might have you back on here to talk more about that, whatever it is when the time's right. But
Yeah.
we'll absolutely be looking forward to that for sure.
Well, thanks for having me.
This has been awesome. It's been great talking to you. And one more question before you go. Is
Okay.
there any chance that we're going to have a whole family collaboration, like with your dad and jamming on one of these albums?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's maybe, I don't know, but not right. I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's off doing his thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think it's working how it is right now. So,
Yeah. Excellent. Awesome. Well, again, Daniel, this has been awesome just hanging out and talking to you about all of this. I really appreciate you taking the time today. This has been great.
thanks for having me.
And because every day is Halloween and we always hate to say goodbye instead, I just always say happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you.